All right. So when you came in today and when you were on the phone, you were like, I'm in a very good place. Why don't you explain to me a little bit more about that place that you're in?
Okay. I like that we're diving right into it because so where I've found myself recently is the whole story, like from the beginning, right? All of the darkest places, all of the great places, all the places where I made right turns or left turns, right? I'm here now, and the whole story makes perfect sense, and I understand, right? And I see now, looking back, that it was perfect. You know what I mean? And where I am at this point is the culmination of all of those steps coming together perfectly, right? And I've touched that maybe at small points in my life, but like I feel it, right? And I feel like when I'm in connection with everything, and I feel like I'm flowing, and I feel like I'm being carried, almost like I'm surfing the wave, like I caught the wave. Like there's certain times in life where you're getting crushed, right? Where it's the opposite, and everything is falling apart, and it feels like everything is against you. And I've spent a lot of time there. I'm on the opposite now, so I'm grateful. I wake up and I'm like super grateful because I feel it. Like I feel the momentum. I feel things are happening, right? It's starting to come together, but it's a paradox. The only reason I am here is because of those super dark places, right? Those were the foundation. That is the foundational layer of this part. And now I can see it so clearly, right? Things that maybe in retrospect, when I was going through them, I didn't understand, but I get it now and I see it.
Yeah, I think that for myself too in life, that whole mindset shift is really the only way to continually evolve, because if you're always looking at those bad periods as life happening to you, then you aren't able to see the beauty of what's going to come out of it. And when you remind yourself that life is not happening to you, it's happening for you, those bad moments don't seem so bad. You realize that it's part of your journey. And even though you're getting crushed, you know that you're getting rebuilt so that you can move to another level. And understanding that is one thing, but then having the emotional intelligence to experience it fully is a whole other thing. And that takes practice because we've been programmed for so long to look at things in this black and white way instead of in, as you said, a state of flow. Yeah, sometimes you're going to miss the wave, but that's just maybe because there's a bigger wave coming. And you missing this wave now is probably the opportunity where you need to look at yourself and understand that you need to work on some stuff in order to catch that next wave. But even understanding that, it's hard to live that. So how do you think that you've been able to take the understanding of that concept and then apply it in actuality?
So one thing you said, right? There's two different things. There's understanding something conceptually, and then there's feeling it, right? I'm in a place now where I not only understand it, but I feel it. Every moment I wake up, right? And I start my day with my practice, like I tap into that and I feel that connection. So it's a paradox. The answer to your question, right? How do you do that? It's a combination of discipline, right? And there's many disciplines that have brought me here, breathwork, martial arts, all these different things where you go hard on a path to train yourself, and the discipline bears its fruits the further down the line you go, right? But then it's the other side. It's also freedom. Not becoming attached, being able to let go of previous versions of you, being to let go of previous models and constructs that served you in one period of your life that may no longer serve you, right? And being able to let go of your ideas of who and what you think you are. And that takes time and that takes practice, right? It's a long, long journey to get. And I'm still in the journey. I understand where I am now is beautiful, but I also know I'm probably going to fall back off at some point and go back into the darkness, and life is going to challenge you. So it's a continual, I understand that it is all in transformation. The exterior world is continuously moving and transforming, right? If you look at it, it's all changing. There's nothing you can do. It's a continuous state of flow and transformation. We are birthed from the universe. So that is our nature too, like staying true to that, understanding that I am not one thing that can be defined by any kind of label or construct, that I am not a noun but a verb. I'm a happening. We all are a happening, and it's transforming and learning how to flow and move with that. So I don't know if that answers your question, right? But like that's what I'm tuning into. And there's layers there, right? You can start at a much, much more basic layer, right? If you're stuck, if you're in the place where you are stuck, how do you start there? Because when you're in the fire, when you're deep in the fire, this is all just
jibber
nonsense.
jabber.
Yeah, you don't hear it, right? And that's okay, right? To go to that place where it's going to break you, right? And you feel broken and you feel that desperation. There's so many lessons in that, right? That's where the gold is like you have to experience that, but not get stuck there. You have to take that pain, the suffering, and through a practice, learn how to alchemize it and make it your strength, right? So like the places where I was broken the worst and the suffering like the worst, right? Like those darkest moments, over time with practice, not running from them, right? Working with those experiences, over time, you learn how to alchemize it, and you make that. That's my bedrock. That's what I go to now. Like when I'm struggling, the things that used to be like my traumas that in my past, now I look to them, and that's where my strength comes from. But that's a process of like how you work with it and how you process that trauma, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Damn, we went really, really deep, really, really fast, bro.
Well, I mean, that's why you're here.
Yeah.
Because this is a learning experience and a teaching experience at the same time. We're all students and we're all teachers. And when we can recognize that we have so much to learn and that we really don't know anything, then we can really begin to grow. Because then we're not stuck, like you said, in those labels and those identities, because those labels and those identities are given to you. When you come out the womb, you don't know black from white, Republican, Democrat. You don't know none of that stuff. That's all put on you by school, parents, media, and constantly pushed on you to where it's hard to find a way out unless you seek it. You have to seek it. And as you said, we are a reflection of the universe. The universe understands this, and the universe it's part of the test that you come into is realizing that I'm not just John Kelly, the father, the son, the husband, the gym owner, the fighter. Those are just labels and identities that I hold on to. In actuality, I'm much more than that. And figuring that out and then trying to put it into practice when somebody steps to you, because I have a conditioned response to me when there's the implication of violence put in front of me, even if it's not someone that's truly a threat, but they feel like they're entitled to their position, how hard it is to actually be like, all right, I'm going to go in another direction. Because my whole life I've been going down this one road, and it's gotten to me where I am, but it's not going to take me to where I need to go. So how do I integrate that into my life so that it's effective and it serves me and it serves the other person too, instead of it becoming like a battle of egos, and at the end of the day nobody wins. So you alluded to something earlier about your practice that you have on a daily basis that kind of helps you drop into that flow state. Can you give us an idea of what that practice looks like?
Yeah, for sure. I just want to say one thing on what you said, right? So that impulse, right? That animal primal impulse. I feel like humans are in a very unique position because we still are connected. We still have all of those primal urges. As much as society wants to make you believe, right, that that's not part of us, it's all still inside of us. That raw, the violence, the sex, like all these like primal urges are inside of us. So it's part of what we are, right? But we also now are awakening, right, to the deeper part, the spiritual part. So we have these two things that are now intertwining, and that's challenging, right? It's challenging. We're stuck in the middle. We're both. We're like, the awakened spiritual thing is occurring to us. That's part of the happening, but then we're still tied to it. And it's not about, I think, pushing either way. It's
integration.
Yeah, the integration. So my practice now, every day, and what it's been for the past couple of years, is going in, right? And there's many ways to go in. My method is the breath, right? Using the breath like a blade to cut through the thoughts in the mind. The mind, like all these labels that you're talking about, right? That were put on us. All of these ideas of what this reality is, that are constantly running through our head, these stories, right? They're not our stories. They're not your stories. They're not my stories, right? And they've been running through our minds for years, so they've gotten stronger. It's like a forest that's filled with weeds, right? And you can't even see the light, so it's filled with it. And for some of us, we can't turn the noise off, and we can't tell the difference between the noise and what we really are. We're lost in it. So the breath, for me, at level 1, is a blade to try to cut through that forest, right? To try to slice through the thoughts. So there's levels to it and how I kind of approach it. Level 1, if you've never done any breathwork practice, right? You don't care about any of like the esoteric spiritual side of it, right? Level 1, what is the value of it, and why would you want to do this, right? It's learning to use the breath to make the breath stronger and deeper by connecting and training to your respiratory muscles to access the full capacity of your lungs. Learning how to connect and engage and strengthen your diaphragm, your intercostal muscles, right? And learning how to breathe deeply and powerfully. So if you're an athlete, right, and you're looking to improve your cardiovascular performance, easiest way, right? The smallest change you can do, which doesn't take a lot of effort, is learning how to breathe correctly. And that's the difference between a highly trained athlete who freaks out at the moment where they have to perform, right? All of us experience that, right? Like if you walk into the cage, you're the killer. You in your gym, you're crushing everybody.
You're comfortable.
You're in the zone, you're comfortable. You go into the cage.
The unknown.
You freeze, right? The tension of it, right? So the breath at that level, right, is learning how to breathe more powerfully. And then once you get better at that, learning how to breathe powerfully, deeply, strongly, you can start to influence your nervous system. So in those situations, right, I can learn how to start to lower my heart rate, how to start to calm the nervous system. But it's just like everything else, right? When you're here and you bring somebody in to do squats, they don't start with 500 pounds. You start with the basics. So the basics is connecting and strengthening. And there's exercises that I still do. I still start every single one of my practice with the fundamentals, connecting to the entire capacity of my lungs, right? That's how I start every single time I sit down. That's level 1. Level 2, as I mentioned, is we learn to start to influence the nervous system. We learn that there's specific patterns that we can do to start to slow things down and start to calm the nervous system, slow down the heart rate. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's times when we need to kind of, get into that powerful, get into that primal state, right? To tap into that's always inside of us. So there's breathing sequences that you can use for that, right? So my morning sequence starts with connecting first, connecting to the breath. I go through about 10 to 15 minutes of breath work. I jump in a cold shower. That's part of it every morning. Cold is really, really, that's another amazing tool that we can talk more about, right? But every single morning. And then I move a little bit. I move my body. I go through a couple of different like yoga asana sequences, but it's nothing strict or disciplined at this point. I just start to, I awaken the breath first. I tap into that. That allows me to kind of really not only open up the lungs, but start to tap into the body.
The presence too.
Yes, all of it. Feel all of it. And then I start to use that energy and move it through my body. Wake the body up. And then I sit in meditation for stillness for about like 20 minutes or whatever. There's no real time frame.
Right.
And I just sit. And that is the most unsexy part of it, but that's where
the magic happens.
That's where it really is. And that took a long time. That took years and years and years. You know, in the beginning I would just sit there and my mind would be running, but learning how to like sink into stillness, like really sink past all of the layers, let go of all of the layers. And the layers of the programming that you talked about, right? I'm John Kelly, I own these things, right? Those are layers that are constantly running through our minds. To let go of those things, you don't push those things away. The practice for me, how I've accessed it, is by letting go and surrendering. And surrendering each layer, everything that you think you know. You have to have humility, right? Like you said, we have no idea what this really is, what this whole thing, what you really are, what I really am, what all of this is. And we're stuck listening to other people's stories. We woke up in someone else's dream, and it's a bullshit dream, right? It's not the real deal. And the answer is inside. I can't give you the answer, right? I can point the way. The way is in, right? And you have to go in and experience it yourself, right? We can try to put into words what that is, but it doesn't translate properly. It's the experience.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I am always trying to myself practice it. Thank you for your reel today, because I was able to put that on it in the morning before work and do my 5 minutes of breathing, my nostril breathing, you know, and put myself in a nice little place. And I talk about these things a lot, and I practice them, but not in a regular way like I practice working out.
Yep.
You know, it's like I do it here and there, and a lot of times it's reactive instead of proactive, because I feel myself getting overwhelmed from all of the different things that are coming at me on a daily basis. I notice when I do create a proactive approach, I'm able to handle those things a lot better. I'm not as reactive. I'm more responsive. I'm able to see things from a different angle, and I sleep better. My workouts are better. My ability to choose the right foods are better. My ability to respond in a conversation where there could be tension is better. I don't get as bent out of shape. So what I try to teach myself, and then an extension, the community of the gym, is the breath. For me, it's similar to what you said, but the way I translate it is it's the language that the nervous system speaks.
Yes.
Because you can't tell your nervous system what to do, especially your autonomic nervous system. You can't be like, think myself calm, think myself calm. You can't think yourself calm. You have to breathe yourself calm. And if you notice when you're not calm, your breath is short, your body's tense. And to your point, when I used to fight, I would feel super tense, and I wouldn't feel like I could be myself because I didn't have a breathing practice. And a friend of mine, you remember Little Caesar, right?
Yeah.
He always used to yell at me to breathe. And I would tell him, that's the worst coaching tip I ever got, because I'm breathing. Of course I'm breathing. But to his credit, and he wasn't no breathwork master or nothing, but he could see the tension in me, and he knows me from childhood. He knows what I look like when I'm relaxed and what I look like when I'm not relaxed. And if I would have just listened to him and worked on the breath and improving the balance of my nervous system through the breath, I probably would have been a much better fighter. You know, I probably would have been able to perform the same way I did in the gym in the cage. Now, just because, you know, I wasn't meeting my potential was probably the best thing to ever happen to me, because it showed me what I needed to do moving forward. So without going through that bad time in my life where I was doing too much and not taking care of my body, I was able to learn about holistic health, which led me to opening the gym, which led to this conversation today. And it's been a constant journey of applying that information to your life, because a lot of people don't have time in the morning to get up and create a practice like that, because they don't plan for it the night before. I think a great day starts the night before. So if you go to bed at 9 and you're like, I'm going to get up at 6, and In the past, I used to work on the computer, whatever, emails, learning stuff, watching YouTube videos, writing programs till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then I would lay in bed and my mind would just be moving. And I wouldn't sleep. I would wake up tired. So now instead, I think, you know what? Let's shut it down. Let's not watch any TV. Let's take a shower, bedtime routine, spend time with the family, go to bed, read. I don't read very long because of, being tired. So I get in like 4 or 5 pages and then sleep, but I don't wake up with an alarm. I get up, no alarm, 6 a.m. every day, no problem. Now, I will say this ruins your weekends because you're still going to get up at 6 a.m. on the weekend. And you're going to be like, like me and my wife are like, hey, let's go to this party. We're like, hell yeah, let's go. 7 p.m. rolls around. You know what? Why don't we just stay home tonight? And there's a beauty in that because yes, you still need to enjoy your life, but at certain times of your life, it's more important to take care of your health, especially as you age, and put in work if you're building something and celebrate down the line. Instead of taking every weekend as a escape from the week, use those weekends as bridges, build up a couple good months, and then fucking go out of town. Take 3 days of partying and staying up and all that stuff. But developing a practice like that takes like discipline the night before. So then that you can get up and have that hour to yourself. And if you don't have an hour to yourself in the morning, what are some ways that you help your clients? Because you guys might not know, but Danny's a breathwork practitioner and teacher. What's your website?
O2Flow, the letter O, 2FLO.com.
Yeah, and he has a great online product. If you need to learn about breathwork, I would highly recommend that. I've learned a lot from you over the last couple of years in this, and I'm so thankful that we have such a good history together that goes back, that I have somebody like you to lead me along this path, So in that vein, how do you handle people with really busy lives? What kind of advice do you give them?
Yeah, so that's what this is for, what you mentioned. When you're like, for example, when you walked into the cage and you felt super tense, right? That's a very extreme moment. That's where I started really like learning how to hone in my breath work. I had, walking into the cage and freaking out. But for a lot of people, they've got that tension or a level of that tension every single day.
All
their
the time.
Job, their family. The purpose of this, there's not one purpose, right? But one aspect of it is sitting down on your own in isolation and really going deep. And we can talk about that, what that really means. But the other thing is that this is meant to be something you carry with you throughout the day. It's not just, I go sit on my yoga mat, I do my yoga practice, and I go back to my regular day, and I'm back to like racing mind. That's not what it's for. The visual that I love, there's a picture from the 70s of this monk. It's in black and white, and he sets himself on fire in protest. I think it was in Tibet, right? And he's not moving. He's completely still. It's an extreme example, right? But he has found a place of stillness no matter what is happening on the outside. And that is ultimately what I'm practicing and starting to teach people how to do. When you are in your fire, whether it's your kids screaming and the phone is going off and you have work to do and that chaos, can you stop right there for a moment and find the stillness, right? And then you can see clearly, and then you can see with clarity, right? And it doesn't mean you're outside of the mess. The mess becomes clear. This is the first thing I have to do. This is the pieces like all come together and the answers come, and you can move through it smoothly. And that takes practice and it takes time, right? So I work with a lot of people, like you said. A lot of people have kids, right? If you have kids, you know this, in the morning, there is no morning, right? Especially if you have young kids, it's not possible, right? But it's taking the time, whether it's in the middle of the day, whenever it is, a few minutes to start to implement and practice this. And it's a practice just like everything else, right? And you have to put in reps. It's about getting in reps. And it doesn't matter if the reps happen in the morning, in the middle of the day, at night, right? A couple of reps, 5 minutes a day is enough. 5 minutes, that's nothing. Everybody has that at some point in the day
spades.
To practice it. But you have to practice it because it's not something that you can call upon when you are in the fire if you haven't practiced, if that muscle is not strong. You know what I mean?
Sure.
When you're feeling that intensity, like you have to have a strong practice, a strong technique that you can go to to kind of pull yourself out of it, like you said, to influence the nervous system. And you being a martial artist, I don't know if people know, that's how we met. John Kelly, when he was a pro fighter, I was one of his sparring dummies and used to beat the shit out of me all the time. That was it, right? That's how we met. And it's interesting how this has come full circle, right? And martial arts was one of my greatest teachers as well, right? Is the first time you walk in, you know, it's an intimidating, especially when we started. It was a totally different world, right? Like MMA, like back in like the early 2000s and all that was a totally different thing. Now it's like structured, it's organized. They have family and kids programs.
And they also have amateur fights and shit. Back then it was nothing. Just get in there, motherfucker.
Just go in and fight. And it was war. And like I felt like even the training, you just walk in and it'd be a bunch of guys and we just...
the training was worse than the fights.
Yeah, the training was way worse than the fights. There wasn't a structure to it. But again, like that was important to kind of go through that and learn from that, right? So it's there. Again, back to your question, how to answer your question. For people that are, you don't need an hour in the morning, right? You need 5 minutes a day. And there's many techniques. There's so many different kinds of techniques. There's not one right and one wrong, right? I encourage people to try a variety of different kinds of breathwork techniques and find what works for you, for your nervous system at this point in your life. It's going to change, just like your training, right?
Yep.
Just like your training
and it should
5
change.
years ago, what it looked like, right? There were certain things that you needed, your diet, all of it is changing. So I encourage people always to experiment, right? There's so many different kinds of breathwork. There's so many great resources that are starting to come out. Find what works for you and go into it. 5 minutes a day, I promise you, if you can be mindful to incorporate it when you're really stressed, then try it. It'll make a difference, right? And even if, I always tell people, right, like, so if you look at your current state and put it on a number system from 1 to 10, 1 is your worst version of yourself, right? You're stressed, you're negative, right?
You're not sleeping,
you're filled with anxiety,
snappy,
fear,
eating
all of
shitty
that.
food.
Yeah. The worst version of you. 10 is flow. I'm not going to say happiness. I'm going to say flow. You know what that is when you're in the zone, right? So if you're at a 6 today and you do 5 minutes of breath work and you go to a 7, that's a win. That's a huge win, right?
And you feel it.
It doesn't have to be a huge jump, right? But just these small incremental changes, like over time, and then eventually what happens is you can be at a 1 and you can get to a 10, right? But it takes practice, right? And
for sure.
So,
well, what I'd like to add to that is that when I am faced with a member or a friend who tells me, you know, they don't have time, I'll say, well, when you leave the gym today, instead of scrolling on your phone for 5 minutes before you leave, because I think everybody does that. You check you check whatever texts you had, you dick around, then you get a notification that leads you down a rabbit hole, then you look up and 10 minutes have passed. You know, take those opportunities in between life, in between meetings, on the road. You could even drive and do breath work. You don't have to have your eyes closed.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, breath work that's one thing that like I had to realize myself. I always thought that I had to do it like in a meditative way.
No.
Now I do it in the grocery store, especially if I'm in a line that's really long and it's not going well.
Yeah.
Like I'll just tap in.
Yeah.
And I'll just count. I'll do like 4-second inhale. I'll hold it for a couple seconds, a nice slow exhale, and then just continue that pattern. And all of a sudden, I'm no longer in that line waiting for this lady. Now I'm working on myself. And I'm almost thankful for you for giving me the opportunity.
That's your teacher. Every moment, this is something that I heard and sticks with me. Every moment is the guru. Every moment. That person in front of you that you hate, that's bringing up all these emotions in you, that is your teacher. Every single moment in front, like online, on that grocery store line, you're stressed out. That's your teacher. It's all those moments and being mindful of that. And that's exactly it. You said it. When you're coming to the gym, whether you ride your bike, drive, walk, that's where you start it. Start tapping in. Start switching from that monkey mind that's pulled in a million directions and start to like shift into the body, into like that highest version of yourself that you
connect to yourself.
That flow space. So Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and like I said, it's all come full circle for me now. Like where I am, right? I never in a million years imagined that I'd be doing this. This was not part of my plan to be teaching. It kind of just unfolded and started happening, and now I feel it. I'm like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, I never had the intention of it. I never went and took courses of how to be like a teacher and do all these kinds of things, you know. And it's interesting now that I've gotten into this teaching space. It's funny, like when I talk to other teachers, like a lot of them, like that's what they ask me, like, oh, where did you get your training, or where did you get your certifications and stuff like that. And I want to tell them the truth, right? You know what I'm saying? But it's it didn't come to me like that, right? I didn't go down the traditional path to like come to this, right? My path was completely different, you know.
But I think that's a lesson in itself, because when you find something that helps you out of a situation, for me, when I was like 12 years old, I spent the whole summer eating chocolate donuts and playing Zelda, you know, and it was a great game. It was a great summer, but I became a little fat shit, you know? And then I remember my mom telling me, she's like, you got tits now. And I was like traumatized. Thanks, Mom. I was traumatized by that. But I looked in the mirror and I was like, I got to make a change, bro. I need to do something different. So luckily I was an avid comic book reader, and fucking Batman had a shredded body. So I'm like, I'm going to fucking do Batman type shit. Just started working out, you know? And then working out became a passion of mine. I didn't have any formal training. I just did it, you know? And then I started to gain confidence because my body began to change. And that confidence allowed me to make more friends. It allowed me to stand up for myself in bad situations, whereas I might have cowered away before. And just by doing that, it led me on a path to growth and development that I never would have been on had I not had that moment. That path wasn't, you know, planned, like you said, but as I got stronger mentally, physically, and more experienced, I was able to show others the way too. Because I've seen a lot of people over these years as a coach, and this is why I, of course, became a health coach and a gym owner. I've seen so many people stuck and going through the motions and getting fatter and getting more unhappy and drinking more alcohol and eating more shitty food, and they don't know how to get out of it. And it's almost like we figured it out for ourselves in that moment, and now we want to help other people out. We see that. We see ourselves in them, and we want to help them out. And that whole path that you took to get to where you are now was because you were going through some shit. And that shit that you went through strengthened you. It made you more resilient, and it allowed you to develop a practice that you could identify with and you could connect to on a regular basis, similar to our martial arts, you know, but a lot less concussions, you know. That's why I left martial arts too. But I think that it's a lesson for society at large, that if you find something that works for you and you love to do it, you can make it your business. Because a business is simply, or an entrepreneur is simply someone who identifies a problem and teaches people how to solve it and charges money for it because there's value for it. You know, I mean, we all got to live, and money is just a form of energy that we exchange. So if I'm exchanging my hard fought energy of knowledge to you, and you're exchanging that value to me, now we're all winning. And I feel like our society for so long has been like, this side can win at the expense of this side. When in actuality, if we can figure out a way, and we have to a degree, to connect and help each other win along the way, all the boats rise with the tide.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like humanity's at this inflection point where there's this group of people that are like fighting so hard to control others, a small group, you know, and that's like the old guard. And then you have like people like us who are not scared to tell our truth and unify in that. And we're like the new wave of society and humanity. And as we grow and stick together and begin to change people's minds, because we have been conditioned, we have been led to believe that these institutions have our best interest at heart, when in actuality, that's not the case. We have our best interests at heart. And when you can look at somebody across from you and identify that person in the line that you hate, but in actuality, they're giving, I got to stop saying that. They're giving you the opportunity. And if you can understand that they're giving you an opportunity and you can begin to foster relationships with people, strangers, then you can really start to change your life and other people's lives. I often look at strangers as like a side quest in a video game. When I'm walking my dog, I'm thinking, I wonder like what that person has been through, and what, if I talk to them, what quest will I be led upon? But I notice nobody wants to look at you anymore. I walk by people and I stare at them, waiting for the eye contact to say something, and they look
John,
down.
You're pretty scary, bro.
They look. I know, dude.
You're pretty scary.
I was thinking the same thing.
But I do the same thing. I do the exact same thing. But I get it.
Where you try to like connect, right?
Yeah.
I guess I gotta walk different or something. Just gotta walk down the street shaking my shoulders or something. But yeah, I feel like when we can identify that connection between people and helping each other, serving each other, then the universe works with us. And it allows connections to come to us you might not have seen with your eyes on your phone or with your eyes on the floor. You don't know who that is. You don't know who those people are, and how they can help you and you can help them.
No, you're 100% right. And you were talking about like these institutions and like people looking for control. That's always been here. That's always been part of the game. It's a necessary part of the game, right? And it's the counterbalance, right? And it's a dance, right? So a lot of people are looking at the world and they're like, oh, it's all fucked up and it's going to shit. There's been people that have been saying that forever. There's also beauty in it, right? And in order to have, like I heard someone once say, show me a hero, I'll show you a tragedy, right? The only way we can like rise up, right? If everything was all good and these institutions, these things that were trying to control us didn't exist, we wouldn't be forced
to grow.
Yeah, to like tap into our inner strength and to look inwards, you know what I mean? So it's all part of it. It's all part of the dance, you know? And you were talking about like your experience when you were 13 and like that negative traumatic experiences. Those are the teachers, right? Those are the moments, the places where you're stuck right now, little places where you're stuck. Those are doors to a new version of you. Those are the places where you have to work, not the places where you should shy away from. That's where you dive in, right? And my primary teachers were extended, extreme isolation and the breath. That was it. It wasn't a course. It wasn't something, somebody told me how to do.
It was necessary.
Yeah. And when I was young, I was on the opposite end of the spectrum. I grew up with the mind state, complete different mind state of it's a dog-eat-dog world. If I want something, I'm going to take it from you. If I see you, everybody's my enemy. That's how I saw the world. And I saw it like, that's how it was. Like in like Jersey and in New York, it was very different. You know what I mean? Like there was none of this spirituality or love or any of it. I didn't hear it. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't here. I was tuned into something different. And that led me, I went all in, man. Like I've always been an intense person. Whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to go all in on it, right? So I made a lot of wrong decisions that led me to my greatest teacher, a prison cell. 3 years in it, right? And not a regular prison. I was in, at the time, it was considered the projects of the prison system. It was where you went if you fucked up in other prisons. If you were the fuck up of the prison system, you got kicked out of that one and you all culminated there. And it was the worst of the worst in a small place, no programs, only young people. I think you couldn't be past like 33 or 35. So it was like young.
A lot of testosterone in there.
Extreme violent offenders, all fighting to be alpha males, right? Extreme violence.
And how old were you?
I was 18, 19, right? For a couple of years. And that was my teacher. Because I was reckless, you know what I mean? Like what got me in there is I thought I was brilliant. I thought I found a brilliant career path. I started, like when you're young, everybody starts selling drugs here and there. But then I was like, wait, I don't need to keep like doing all this stuff. I had this like hunting mentality. I was like, I'm going to start hunting drug dealers and start sticking up drug dealers.
Which is actually a good business model because they can't.
I was like, I can't go to jail. I was like, this is perfect. You know what I mean? This is the perfect
die,
idea. Yeah. But when you're 17, 18, you don't even think about that.
Yeah.
You think you're invincible. I thought I was invincible. You know, and that's a whole different like story, like all those things, like, and I started doing it, and that went crazy, you know, like I went really deep into that, into like sticking people up, and like I thought I was brilliant, I thought I was invincible, but it took me to this place. And then in this place, when I was there, I saw the depths of humanity, of how dark we can get. You have no idea. Like, there's a lot of people now that are like young people that are calling for violence in a lot of different ways. You don't understand like what we become when violence takes over, right? People talk about war. We talk about war. We're living in this country here. There's nothing here, right? But like when real violence starts to take over, when you kill somebody that I love, what that brings out of me and what I turn into and what we turn into, right? And that's what that place was. That place, there was people in there I remember that were like, had grown up in prison. They're 30 years old and they've been in prison since they were 11. You know what like?
There's no going back.
It creates monsters that you can't even imagine. You know what I mean? Like what we can become. But in that place, when people first think about that, when I first thought about it, I was thinking about like the violence, like fighting, getting stabbed, like, you know, I'm going to be stuck in like all the physical aspects, and those are real. But we have the ability to adapt to anything. You'll adapt to that real quick. You know what I'm saying? It's sink or swim. You'll adapt to the violence. You know what I mean? Like I remember I reached a point, I saw people get stabbed and killed right in front of me. It did nothing to me. I just kept going. You know what I mean? Like you'll adapt to that. Where the suffering was in the mind. That's what I realized. The suffering was missing and thinking about the outside world, my friends, my families. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
All of
the
those
time
things.
You're losing.
Yeah, all the things, right? And you're like 18, like you're at the prime of your life, right? You want to go out and experience so that is where my suffering came from. And at night, you would hear these monsters crying and screaming in their beds, breaking down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I would hear it. And I saw all these people like going to like getting medicated, and I saw like the battle is not only physical, right? I need to survive physically. I learned how to do that, right? That's one level of survival, but can I survive internally, right? And when you're trapped in a cell, right? Not lose your mind. And that's where, at that time, I started exploring all different religions. I read the Bible, I went into Islam, I started reading about all these different things, right? And I came across and they all had little things that resonated with me, you know?
Sure.
But I found a book on Zen Buddhism, and that really hit me. And I realized, wait a second, this is all my creation. I created this, but then it also started teaching me mindfulness was the key that I learned there. I started learning how to control the mind. All these things that we're talking about. Like a lot of people tell me like, yeah, you talk about controlling the mind, but you don't understand. I have, you know, my job and like this, and like I have to pay my taxes and like, you know, all these stuff. Like I understand. It's possible to turn it off. And what I found there was through these practices, again, that was my teacher. I had nothing but time, extreme suffering, right? I was in hell in the outside world, but over time, with the breath, very basic. I didn't have a teacher there, right? It was a very basic practice. I started learning how to like tune in. And then I started experiencing bliss. And I'll never forget that when I started experiencing bliss.
In hell.
In a hell that I promise you, even now, like I watch all these prison movies, I still haven't seen. The place I was in, Albert C. Wagner Correctional Facility, they called it Gladiator School. That place got shut down, right?
Thankfully.
And I still haven't seen anything like of what it was really like in there. You know what I mean? But the point is, I found it. I'll never forget. I woke up and I had no hope. I still had a shitload of time in front of me. You know what I mean? Time moves fast when things are beautiful, but when you're suffering, time moves slow. Every second goes, right? It's so slow. So I experienced it in there, and I realized, oh shit, I don't need anything. I don't need anything external. I don't have any clothes. I don't have nothing. I don't even have hope. I don't even know if I'm going to make it through the day. But yo, I found it. You know what I mean? That was my teacher. And I never imagined it to come full. That's why I'm saying, like, it's coming full circle now. And I'm realizing that is why that happened. I needed to be in that extreme incubator, in that situation, in the most extreme situations, to find that.
Did you stop when you got out? Did you stop doing your daily breath work? Did you go back to normal life?
It was, so first when that happened is when I made, like you said, I realized. Like when I first went in there, I was in the jungle, and it's the upside down world, meaning like the people at the top of the hierarchy are the most violent, right? Like that's the top of the hierarchy, right? So like I went in there, and when I was young, I went in and I was like, I'm here, this is what we're doing. So like it was like gang wars I'm involved in, and then all of a sudden I'm smuggling drugs into the prison, and I'm going deeper into it, and I'm starting to, but once I started to like do this practice, I realized, I saw clearly, I had clarity. And from that moment on, that's when the shift happened. That's when the first shift happened in my life. Like, okay, I'm changing my life around. You know what I mean? It was a very basic practice. It wasn't anything complex. Like, it was just starting to learn how to control the mind.
Right.
I came out, and it was on and off, right? It stayed with me. There was times, but also, like, my life was overwhelming. All of a sudden, you're free again. Like, I don't even know how to put into words what that feeling is like. You know what I mean? Like, that's, like, and I had been given a rebirth. So, like, I went to the extremes. Like, I experienced extreme suffering, extreme isolation. So when I came out,
you were off the chain, as they say.
I was like, I wanted to experience extreme hedonism and pleasure, right? And that's what I went into, deep into it. You know what I mean? And like, but it was beautiful. It was part of the balance, you know? And like, we live in South Beach, and like, what I've seen, I've been here for a long time now. That was one of the first things. I was dreaming about this place in my jail cell. I was like, that's the place I want to go. It was just a pipe dream. I was like, I don't even know if it's, if I'm going to get out of here, but you know what I'm saying? So I came here, and that was a beautiful part of it too. Like I know there's a negative connotation to like people partying and drinking and doing all the drugs that there is, right? And like everything could be a negative.
If it's done forever.
Yeah, of course, if it's done but also if it's done for the wrong reasons, right? Like a lot of people out here like social climbing and trying to do things and like maneuvering, like you're trying to do all, like, there's negative. It depends what your intentions are. I was out, and every day, it didn't matter what everybody else was doing. I was there remembering where I was and was just like, fuck yes. You know what I'm saying? I'm celebrating. I'm having my own party inside. This is my party. Like, yes, I made it out. So like, I went deep into that world, and I learned so much from it, right? And there's a beauty in connecting with your friends, right? And like genuinely people you love, and genuinely like laughing, dancing, getting lost in that. That's beautiful too. And I went deep into that, right? And it was a beautiful part of my life. And there's been stages. The first stage of the breath, my first teacher was prison. My second master teacher, right, that I bowed down to, where it really shifted, was the plants, psychedelics, right? So I had continued my interest in all these different religions, and like I continued reading. I continued diving deep into all of them, like I went deep. Like I remember when I was in prison, I would sit with all the Muslims, and we would go deep. And then like, I don't know if you guys know about like 5%ers, we would go into that. Like I would sit with like, the Christians, and we would talk, and we would go deep. And that process continued as I came out. And then I started getting really deep into shamanism, right? And reading and studying. And then around like 2006, I started reading about ayahuasca and all these things. But it was before everybody knew what it was.
It was before the internet, pretty much.
There was nobody to talk to about it. I was just reading about it. I started reading about DMT. And I reached a point. I was like, okay, I don't want to keep reading about this. It's time. I want to do this. I didn't know how. I found like some suspect, shady internet website, and I started chatting with some guy on the internet. He was telling me how I can make it myself.
Yeah, I remember going to your house
Yeah.
and doing it.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, like, I'll bring you. You're an important part of this because so what happened is I ordered a piece of wood from the Amazon, Mimosa hostilis, that's high in DMT, and I had this extraction process. I had no idea what was going to happen. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if this person's real. You know what I mean? I don't know. And I'm going through this whole entire process for a week, like science experiment, like beakers, Bunsen burners, you know what I mean? Goggles, like trying to make this thing until I came to this pure crystal, right? So you come from a piece of wood to pure crystal. And then when you go, like, it's not like my boy, like, yo, I did it. It's dope. Like, I don't know if I did it right. I don't know if I did it wrong. I don't know what's supposed to happen. And
having the balls to take it.
And I did it. And I broke through. Like, you know, like, there's layers of DMT. There's layers of DMT, right? But, like, if you've done it and you really understand, like, I broke through all the way and I merged for the first time into the one, into the source of everything. And it was the most powerful. That was the line in the sand, right? I've had a lot of experiences, but that was the line in the sand. There's the before and after. And that transformed me to my core. Like, I feel like it went into my DNA and changed everything. Like, who I think I am, what my understanding of all this is, you know, like, of everything, you know. That was the biggest breakthrough for me. But it had to come after this experience, you know? Like, I went through this, and then this is the second teacher. And I remember the first time I did it, like, it was like enough for like 20 or 30 trips, right? I did all of it in the first sitting, like 3 hours. Like DMT,
Damn.
like you take like
you just kept going back
minutes,
in?
Kept going back. It was so good. It was so powerful, so intense. It was giving me downloads, right? Like, when you really get into the DMT experience, there's layers. The first layer is the beautiful visuals, the fractals, the mandalas that all these, like, you know, religions have talked about. Second layer, you penetrate it. You're in it, like you're in this room, right? You keep going deeper. There's beings that start to arrive.
The elves.
Whatever you want to call, I don't know what they are. And then you can go all the way in where you become the one. But they're master teachers too. Like, they were showing me what we are, what this whole thing really is, like master teachers, just downloads. So it was so good. I did it all. And then like a year or two later, you know, the breath was an important part afterwards to integrate. So that's really what my practice is now, right? Is the integration of the two, of the psychedelics and the breath. Because a lot of people have these blowout experience, right? These transcendent experiences where they touch it, but they don't know what to do with it. And they come back in their regular life and they get caught back in that hamster wheel, right? And they lose it. It's not gone. It's still there.
It's just pushed down on top of all the other stuff.
These experiences are so intense. Like, it's impossible to put into words for people that haven't done it, but it's like, it's essentially like in a movie, there's the beginning, middle, there's a couple of twists, climax, end, right? This is like the whole movie is a tidal wave and just falls on you at once. And it's the movie of all of humanity, of everything, of the universe, of God, of
past,
everything,
present, future.
Everything, eternity, you feel it. So it takes time to process, unpack, and to integrate. And the breath was the part afterwards. So for a couple of years, this was so intense. I was terrified to give it to anybody else. And there was nobody to talk to at this time also. The people I talked to thought I was crazy because, like, in 2006 and 2007, if you were talking about DMT, there was nobody that knew. Even, like, my shadiest drug dealer friends had no idea what the fuck I was talking about, right? And I'm having these massive transcendent experiences. And every time I did it, I would make it. And I'd be like, okay, this time I'm just going to do a little bit and I'm going to save it. I did it again. All of it, one sitting, like hours just in, right? Hours of DMT. And then around 2011, you were the first one I ever gave it to. And I remember because it was telling me, because like it's crazy. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but when you're in there in the beginning, like when you first do like a small trip, like it's showing you what it's going to show you. It doesn't give a fuck what your intention is or like what you think you're coming in here to do. It's going to show you what you need to learn. But what I realize is when you stay in for a long time, we go through that class, But then I can start to ask it questions, and like we're comfortable, like me and you were talking. And I remember just going deep, like asking all kinds of questions. I was like, show me this, tell me this, right? And I remember, and one of the things that came up, it said, tell everyone. Tell everyone what this is. Tell everyone we are here. Tell everyone what we really are. And I was like, fuck, I got to give this to somebody. But I'm still terrified. It's so strong. But then I saw you and we had known each other. And I was like, this big motherfucker can handle it, right? I was like, this guy can handle this, right? And you had come to me and I didn't expect it to come from you. And then, yeah, you were the first one officially. And then, yeah, since then it's been continued to be my master teacher, right? And I've continued to like explore other psychedelics, other plant medicines, going deep into it, and to bring it full circle, how it all came full circle. I found this kind of on my own, but now I love what's happening, right? Good or bad, how people want to perceive it, that everybody knows what this is, right? You can say ayahuasca to anybody and they've heard it. They have an idea of what it is, even if they haven't done it. And now people are all going to South America, and there's a specific area in Peru where this is like highly concentrated deep in the jungle in the Amazon. And it's around Iquitos, and that's where like all these retreats are popping up. That's where most of the shamans are that are administering these things. And what's crazy is after like talking to my mom and everything like that, it all kind of came full circle, because that is where my family actually comes from.
Oh, shit.
Bro, which is crazy, right? Like that specific part of the jungle, right?
It's part of you.
And I realized that, you know what I mean? Like it came full circle, right? Like I found it on my own, but then I went and I found out, wow, like this is actually where like my blood actually comes from, you know? So that resonated deep with me. And then I went to the Amazon myself. I went down there. I've done it down there, and that's continually part of the practice, you know?
Of course.
And all of this is like not anything I've ever shared. There was another part of it where, you know, I had a deep concussion, which was another teacher, but all of the traumas were teachers. Yeah.
I think it was a baboon.
No. This was after that. This was after Baboon.
Oh, really?
Baboon for sure gave me concussions. 1,000%.
I think he gave us all concussions.
He gave me concussions. Yeah, no, this is a different time after that. But yeah, man, it's what I'm saying now. All of those experiences led here to today, to where I am in my life now, to where I wake up every day, you know, and it was perfect. It's all perfect.
What I like to explain to some people is that breath work is similar for me to psychedelics. So I've had my psychedelic journeys. I had a really strong one, a line in the sand at 18 years old with a heavy dose of mushrooms. So there was before that, and then there was after that, you know? And that changed the way that I viewed the world. That allowed me to walk on to a college football team with no high school experience. Like if most people can't walk on to a college team, even if they played 4 years. I didn't even play it down.
Yeah.
But the mindset shift that the mushrooms gave me told me I could do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
I could control this reality if I want it bad enough, and I act on it. You can't wish shit to happen, but you can visualize it and walk towards it, you know, every single day, and embody it before it happens, right? Become it. And then I did all these psychedelic journeys with you, and since then, ayahuasca and mushrooms on a regular basis. I'm on a microdose right now, you know?
Me too.
Hey. And I learned that through breath work that I am an instrument of DMT, of psychedelics, that I can actually bring that out of myself. I don't want to say in a cleaner way, because I don't want to like make plant medicines look like dirty at all. But I feel like it's like a jet plane. A plant medicine is a jet plane, but you can get there through breath work in a regular practice. You might not be able to reach the depths of the DMT. There's no way you're going to do that. I don't know. Maybe there are breathwork practitioners that can, but I see a lot of people that don't integrate their psychedelic experiences, and they keep on doing psychedelics and they keep on doing psychedelics. And I wonder why they are, what are they chasing? What are they looking for? And why aren't they integrating those experiences? Because I feel like part of the benefit of doing psychedelics is integrating and changing and adapting. And I feel like if you do too many too often, you lose that ability, and you're kind of disrespecting that. And I feel like breathwork is a great way to respect that psychedelic experience and continue that journey of integration, but not necessarily have to overlap it with multiple psychedelic experiences. I'm not as experienced as you are. Maybe you can touch on that with the breathwork and the psychedelics a little more.
For sure. So I think I loved that I was able to dive into each one of these practices in their purest form on their own. And I think in the East, they went deep into the breath, into mindfulness and meditation, right? A lot of the Native American tribes here were accessing the same place through the plants. The plants were their master teachers. So you're right. They're both ways to get into the same space, right? There's no right or wrong. And you're right. A lot of people are taking these powerful medicines, right? That like having these transforming experiences, but they don't have any structure around it. They don't have any guidance, any real wisdom around it, and that could be dangerous, right? And that could lead you down. It could lead. And
I think that's what a lot of people are scared of.
And if you don't have the structure and somebody who's experienced, right, to help you, to guide you through it, it's your work still, right? I can't do the work for you, but I can give you a little bit of guidance. And yeah, for me now my practice has become the bridge of those two things. And that for me is the ultimate culmination of it. I have had full-blown ayahuasca experiences with just the breath. Full-blown tripping. Like, COVID was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, I'm sorry for all the people that suffered, but like for me, it was the most, I'll tell you why, right? Because when COVID happened, everybody kind of got locked down. And I was like, wait, this is just like prison. We're all about to go into lockdown. And I remember in prison, either you do the time or the time does you, right? How do you do the time? Oh, I have a blank slate in front of me now. I can do anything I want. How do I make myself stronger? How do I make myself better? That's what I was doing in prison. I was training every day. I was reading. I was building myself. So during COVID and during the lockdown, that's when my practice went from like an hour to like 3.5, 4 hours. I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning. I was going deep. I had nothing else. I didn't have to check my phone. I didn't give a fuck what was happening on in the outside world. I wasn't connected to any of that. I was just building. And I didn't know what was going to come, but I remember the day, like I just started my breathwork practice and then I just went into like a full-blown trip, like gone. I was gone. And I wasn't ready for it. And it was so intense. I remember I woke up shaking in the fetal position in my bathroom, like make it stop. Like it was too much. Like, so yes, it's 1,000% possible, but it's a slippery thing. If you try to do it, it'll never happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was part of the process. Right. But now my practice and what I've been sharing with people is how do you integrate the two, right? So whether you're doing a macro diet dose or a micro dose, and it depends on the thing you're doing, right? There's certain things that you're going to trip so hard, you don't even know you have a body. You don't even know if you're breathing, right? So all of this concepts of breathing, you're going to be so gone. This
you'll do it automatically. Don't worry about it.
But for a lot of things like mushrooms, even for ayahuasca, depending on the dose and stuff, what I realized was first, before using the breath, like let's say, for example, I'm going to do a heavy dose of mushrooms, like a monster dose, 5 grams, 7 grams.
Hero's dose.
Yeah, those are master teachers, right? If we're going to do that, what I do is as soon as I consume it, I start the breath work. I start the breathing. And I do that because for a number of reasons. First, I don't care who you are. When you take a big dose of anything, you're going to be scared. You're going to be nervous, right?
For sure.
I'm still terrified every time I do it. You have to have respect for it, right?
Right.
But that breath work allows you to start to work through those nerves, right? And it allows
Control
you to
the nervous system.
to start to calm down and to get into a state so that once that mushroom or whatever it is starts to come in, you're meeting it like this.
Right.
And you can...
Yeah, you're not fighting it.
Yeah, and you can just...
You're integrating it.
It's a dance, right?
Yeah.
And then while you're in it, there's going to be parts where you get wrecked.
Right.
Right? Where it's overwhelming.
You want it to end.
You want it to end. It's giving you something you can't. You're resisting, right? So in those moments, that's when you stop and breathe, right? And you settle in so that you can process and you can understand what's being given to you and what's happening because it's for a reason, right? So I can anchor myself. My breath is the anchor where I can handle the waves of the storm.
For sure.
But then also, on the flip side, sometimes you touch something that is ecstatic, right? You feel that. You tap into like ecstasy. I can make those moments even more
enhanced.
I can enhance them. I can extend them. I can breathe into them and really, really, really squeeze all the juice out of them. You know what I mean? So, and then afterwards, after you go through all of this, I use the breath daily after the experience, even if it's for 5 minutes a day, to remember, to connect to the feeling, right? Also, what were the lessons every time you
the
have
state of being you were in?
The state you were in, what it felt like. I use the breath to stay connected to it, right?
To shift.
And to quiet the noise and to remember the lessons. There's always lessons. And the lessons keep coming for weeks and weeks, sometimes months after. You don't remember everything, right? When you come out, you're trying to remember.
You're trying to, yeah.
Yeah, so we use the breath afterwards. Having a practice of 5 minutes a day will allow you to stay connected to it, to understand deeper the messages you've already downloaded. But then when I'm in that state, another thing will pop up that I totally forgot about, another piece in the puzzle.
Right.
So we're unpacking for a long time, for weeks and weeks, months and months. And then once I feel like I fully got this full picture, now I understand what this
Let's
whole
do it again.
Wait, not yet. There's one more step. Integration. So I continue to use the breath to be the guide to show me how do I integrate this into my life, right? It's okay. Some of us understand it conceptually, but you have to make the changes. You have to take action, right? It's not just understanding it.
Application.
How do you apply it and really make it part of you, right? And then when you're ready, when it calls you again, I don't force it.
No.
When it calls me again, hey, come back in. Let's do some more work. We go back in.
Yeah, just like we talked about earlier before the podcast, how, I have an opportunity to do Bufo on Friday, but I'm not sure if I'm called to it because I have so much momentum that I'm building on a couple projects that I'm almost scared to, go to that space where I pull myself out of this reality. But there's also the side of me that thinks, well, it could be a good thing. It might slow me down, but it could give me another perspective that might be necessary for the next stage of advancement. So it's like there's always that balancing act that you got to do. And I wanted to cover, before we ended the podcast, your current journey,
Sure.
Where you're at and how you've gone from, just teaching breathwork to actually organizing events to help facilitate the plant medicines with the breathwork. Maybe you could tell the audience
Sure.
a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what I'm doing now is primarily teaching breathwork and meditation in a number of places. Hanu Yoga Studio on Miami Beach, formerly Green Monkey. That's where I'm primarily teaching.
What days?
Monday and Tuesday night at 7:15 p.m. But I've also been hosting workshops. But in private, what I've really been doing is I've still been synthesizing my own DMT, and I've been administering it to people, close people, right? And we've been doing this. We've been doing it with the breath, right? First, we start with the breath. We learn how to breathe, and we prepare for the experience, and we've been going through it. But what's happened more recently is I've been really, really fortunate to align with a retreat center in Tulum, outside of Tulum. So Tulum is a beautiful place, but it's chaos. It's party central right now, and it's booming. So we found a place that was specifically designed for this, to have these deeper, transcendental, expansive experiences. So it's in the jungle, totally isolated, but it's got a level of luxury to it. You know what I mean? Like, you have everything you need. You have a full kitchen. Like, it's you're comfortable, you know? And I went down there and I recently did Bufo, which is another form of DMT, right? When the DMT that's extracted from the plants is NN-DMT. This is 5-MeO-DMT, so it's similar but a little bit different. And again, I had the deepest transformative experiences where I literally merged with Source, God,
The essence of everything.
and it was perfectly clear. I was experiencing what it's like behind all the layers to be that being. I was that being, right? That is eternal, that lives forever, that has no form, and that is building universes, that all of this physical world comes out of, right? That life comes out of, right? That, like, if this is the source, it all emerges out of it, and we're it. Right now, we're in one layer of it, but also feeling the power of it, feeling the love of it at the deepest level, right? That is the deepest experience that DMT has given me, and that's, you know, that I can access through meditation and breath work now. But they cultivated a perfect space for me to really go into it and have a beautiful experience, you know? And now we're going to be hosting a retreat in a couple of, I think about 2 months. The date hasn't been solidified yet, but I'll let you know. Where we're going to be bringing people down, and it's not going to be come down and trip,
Party. Right.
or just come down and trip. It's not that. It's going to be an opportunity for everyone to experience all these different modalities, to expand. Meaning, like, we're going to start the morning. Everything's optional. It's a beautiful place. You can just go and just chill in the jungle and live in an amazing villa and just chill for a couple days and disconnect. But in the morning, we're going to be doing breath work together. We have ice baths. Each villa has its own little private little pool that we're going to turn into ice baths. So we're going to do some ice baths. And then my girlfriend Kata, who's an amazing yoga instructor, she's going to be co-hosting it with me. She's going to be taking us through a yoga asana, a yoga practice in the morning. So really waking up mindfully, kind of like what I do in the morning, right? But doing it together as a group, all optional. You could just do the yoga. You could just do the breath work. And then the option is you can just do that. But each day, if you want to have a little bit of an enhanced experience, you have the option to microdose. We're going to give the option to microdose psilocybin if you want to. And then if you want to go even deeper, we have a whole entire team of facilitators that are really skilled, right? Like, that's something that was very important to me, right? Finding people that were really genuine and understood and that were caring, and I felt that there, right? It was perfectly curated. Facilitators that if you want to have a private experience, you know, if you want to do DMT, if you want to do Bufo, the place is built, so you're going to have your own little spot where you can go, and we're going to be scheduling those throughout the day. But then it's also beautiful. Like, we're also going to be going to, there's cenotes. I don't know if you know what those are, right?
Yeah, like the beautiful
cave lakes. Like, it's incredible. There's so many, and the place we're staying is literally surrounded by them. They're all like 5-10 minutes away, and there's so many of them. So we're going to be going, exploring, going deep into the jungle. So there's going to be many layers of it, but the idea of it is to expand, right? Expand comfortably outside of your comfort zone, and to give you the opportunity and to create the space where you can have that experience, and also you can integrate it right afterwards.
Super important.
And you're going to be with a group of people that are like-minded or are going through this. You're not going to be there by yourself, right? And we're going to be there to support them. And yeah, we're super excited about it. You know, that's the start of a new part of the journey.
Yeah, and if you're interested in getting involved in any of this stuff, there's going to be a link in the description to this. I'm also going to link Danny's breathwork workshop, and I'll also link the yoga studio. So there's many ways that you could work with Danny. You know, I definitely recommend you find a way to either work with Danny or another breathwork practitioner and just integrate that into your life, just like your workouts and your nutrition and your sleep and your work and your love, because it will only enhance all those things. And like Danny said, it doesn't take an hour a day, literally 5-10 minutes a day. Then you begin to love it. Then you go on Sundays.
Yeah.
Then you stay home Saturday night so you can go Sunday morning and hang out with Danny at South Point Park and go deep and forget where the earth is on nothing but the breath. So I highly recommend you guys check Danny out. He's the real deal, and I'm honored to have you on my podcast, and I appreciate everything you've ever done for me, and I look forward to the growth that we're going to share for the rest of our lives.
Yes, sir. Much love, John Kelly.
For sure.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next one.